Welcome to the Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, Katie Wilson has her explanation for Parentgate, and polling is out on the shutdown. Who's actually winning? But before we get to any of that, time for your daily dose of adrenaline.
You want me to stick this into my heart? Are you f***ing nuts?
Yesterday, Zoran Mamdani was being raked over the coals because he said that the true victim of 9/11 was his aunt, who had to stop riding the subway because of Islamophobia, because of her hijab. Nobody believed this story. Nobody believed his crocodile tears. And yes, the true victim of 9/11 was not the people buried in concrete or burned to death or falling out of the windows of the World Trade Center. But the true victim of 9/11 is Zoran Mamdani's aunt. Give a listen.
I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of New York City.
Crocodile tears. Don't believe you, dude. Don't believe you at all. You're making this up.
I want to speak to the memory of my aunt.
Crying more. Don't believe you.
Who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
Yeah, nobody believed you, so people started digging. And they found the aunt. And the aunt lives in Tunisia and doesn't cover her hair. And, for all we know, has never even been to New York. So Mamdani gets called out on this. And, all of a sudden, has an explanation ready to go, which we knew it was going to be this explanation.
How will you respond to President Trump?
Recently, in a recent address about Islamophobia, you referenced your aunt and some of the harassment she was facing post 9/11. Is that a blood relative?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was speaking about my aunt. I was speaking about Zerafui, my father's cousin, who sadly passed away a few years ago.
My aunt, my father's cousin. I'm confused what that actually means.
I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate.
What's that make us?
Absolutely nothing. Which is what you are about to become.
Yeah, that's about what I think of that story. No, wait. It's his aunt who's really his girlfriend in Canada that he met on the internet, so you wouldn't know her. Right? That's what it is. That's what it is. No. I know who his aunt really is.
I'm watching my figure for my new boyfriend.
Ooh, boyfriend? Wow, that's news.
I'll say. What's his name, Jam?
His name is George.
George what?
Georgia Tropicana.
What a nice name. Is he Cuban?
No, I mean Glass. George Glass.
That's funny. I've never heard of a George Glass at our school.
That's because he's a transfer student. He came in the last week of school. He's really good looking, and he thinks I'm super cool.
Sure, Jan.
Yeah. Who believes Mamdani's story? Nobody, right? We know that. Nobody believes Mamdani's story.
Nobody.
Right? There we go. There he is. Mike's back in the booth today. So, my friends, he's completely full
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Mamdani is completely...
back but slow on the trigger, it would seem.
It's okay. He just got off a plane, man.
It's just
fine.
a delay.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
Hey, at least everything works now.
Exactly.
I love it. I come back into town and miraculously everything works again. Coincidence? I think not.
Transmitter works. Internet's working. I don't want to jinx it. I'm not going to list everything. I don't want to list everything that we've had going wrong the past few days. Speaking of things going wrong, Zoran Mamdani. So, Mamdani is trying to divide the left. And what he's doing is he's using the Barack Obama playbook. Let's make everything about intersection.
Obama!
Exactly. Let's make everything about intersectionality. Let's make everything about who's to blame. Let's go into our identities. Let's make everything about who's racist, who's not racist. It's Islamophobia. It's not Islamophobia. And he's using this to divide the left. That's what he's doing. He's using this to divide the left. Because now it is, do you want to support the most popular person in the party who happens to be a radical communist jihadi? Or do you want to say no and take the risk of getting primaried by your own party against the Democratic Socialists of America? Gad Saad, professor, wrote an amazing book called Suicidal Empathy. When I saw this interview with Jon Stewart on The Daily Show and Mamdani, Jon Stewart is Jewish. And you're interviewing the guy who talks about how much he hates Jews and raps about terrorists, and you're comparing him to Jackie Robinson?
I wish you all the best. Honestly, I think any New Yorker who looks at someone getting an opportunity, who's representing communities that have not been as represented, a Muslim, a young person, a progressive, a democratic socialist, there are so many different communities that are looking to you, and this, I hate to put it on you, as a bit of a Jackie Robinson moment. And
are you kidding me with this? Yes, Zoran Mamdani, the failed rapper who grew up in the home of a millionaire movie director and a successful college professor radical, and Jackie Robinson. Are you serious with this? That's suicidal empathy. That's what that is. Because you're calling this guy Jackie Robinson.
The importance for me of international solidarity is that it takes me out of the American political landscape and reminds me just how tame some of the things are that I'm actually calling for or that I support. And it reminds me of the necessity of grounding ourselves in the struggles as opposed to the fights around the struggles. For anyone to care about these issues, we have to make them hyperlocal. We have to make clear that when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF.
I'm sorry, what did he just say? So the NYPD goes around putting boots on people's necks, but that's because of the Jews? Is that... Oh, that's Jackie Robinson. That's Jackie Robinson. Right, Jon Stewart? Or maybe this.
Especially in New York City, you have so many opportunities to make clear the ways in which that struggle over there is tied to capital's interest over here.
Uh-huh. Capitalism, bad. Yeah, just like Jackie Robinson. Exactly. I know that Jackie Robinson just wanted to play baseball and destroy America through playing baseball, right? That's what he wanted to destroy America using America's pastime. Are you kidding me with this? And as much as we're focusing our attention on the left and what Zoran Mamdani is doing to the left, and actually Canary Mission has a great new video out right now, which is just posted on social media, which shows that the Democratic Socialists of America are out to destroy the Democratic Party using their own words. I'll make sure to share this video over on my social channels today. As much as we're delighting in seeing the left rip itself apart, we should be concerned. Because the farther to the left the Democrats get dragged, the less moderates there are, and the more radical they become. And the thing I've been saying for a while now is if Zoran Mamdani wins, which he's likely to win, because they couldn't find a candidate worth voting for to run against him, if he wins, every Democrat is going to take this as a sign of they have to be like him in order to win. Or now it's time to run because if a guy that radical can get elected, they can get elected too. And it's dividing the left. Hakeem Jeffries endorsed Mamdani. Kathy Hochul endorsed Mamdani. All these Democrats endorsing Mamdani because they're so desperate to hold on to power, they don't want to get left behind. And as much as we're celebrating the left self-destructing because the left has to do whatever the Democratic Socialists want them to do, whatever the commies want them to do, we have our own problems on the right. And unfortunately, they're starting to spill over from the internet into the real world. We used to say the internet isn't the real world. Well, unfortunately, it's rapidly becoming the real world when all anybody does is interact on the internet. Last night, Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes on as a guest. This is a show that he runs on social media, and you may think to yourself, why is this relevant to me? Tucker Carlson has jumped the shark completely. Tucker Carlson has lost the plot. I have people I disagree with on the show as often as I can. We ask Democrats to come on the show all the time. I always push back. I do so politely. And if I don't get the answers I want, I got all the rest of the show to refute what they say. It's about having a conversation. It's about changing hearts and minds. It's about understanding the other side. That's what we do here. When you have a guest on that you disagree with, your job is not to agree with your guest. Your job is to make them work for it, make them prove it, and prove that they have a leg to stand on. Even when I'm nice to people like Adam Smith or anybody else who comes on this show, I make them work for it every single time. Tucker Carlson doesn't do that. Tucker Carlson has them on to say the things he thinks he can't say. And now he's not even caring about that anymore. He just has them on. And the only reason I can think he's having on guests like Nick Fuentes, an actual white supremacist, is to try and divide MAGA. Somebody has burned Tucker Carlson. I don't know if he thinks it's Fox News. I don't know who he thinks it is. But more and more, we're seeing why Tucker was fired from Fox News. And it wasn't because of Dominion, and it wasn't because of anything else. And now, mind you, no reason has been released. But it is clear that Fox News was the guardrails keeping this guy on the main path, and he wanted to leave the main path to crazy town. Nick Fuentes is a full-on white supremacist. This guy is a full-on neo-Nazi type. Need me to prove it to you? Here's what Nick Fuentes has said before. Are you ready for this? This is some good stuff. Last night, this is what he said when he was talking to Tucker Carlson. And notice Tucker Carlson does not push back.
So it was like late December. It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's?
Mm-hmm. Always an admirer. But we don't need to go into that. I guess.
Well, that's okay. Let's get back. We'll circle back to that.
It was weird because the reason I mentioned that.
Okay, we'll circle back to that. Not you're a fan of a guy who killed millions of people and you claim you're America first, but you're a fan of Joseph Stalin, who's the kingpin of communism.
Also, okay, Jen Psaki, let's circle back.
Right. What is that? By the way, for the record, in the 2-hour interview, they never circle back. That's right. Like it's totally like a line from Morgan
Spoilers,
Freeman.
dude.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you shouldn't go. So they never circle back to the Joseph Stalin who killed millions of people. But he's a fan. He's a fan. Hang on. What about things Nick Fuentes has said when he's not on Tucker Carlson's show?
Hitler was a pedophile and kind of a pagan. It's like, well, he was also really f***ing cool. So, time to grow up. We're not children anymore.
By the way, the reason he thought he was really blanking cool is because he killed all the Jews. So hang on. You like Stalin, you like Hitler, and this is who Tucker Carlson's having on the show. Now, I get you want the clicks, but push back a little bit because you know what this video should have been? Tucker Carlson owns Nick Fuentes. Tucker Carlson destroys Nick Fuentes, the white supremacist. That's not what it was at all. Instead, it was Tucker Carlson agreeing with the white supremacist. Think it's just about the Jews? Here's what he said about the Christians.
How do you explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that, John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all, George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I can just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody.
You dislike them more than Antifa? You dislike them more than the BLM rioters? You dislike them more than the Nazis? Because they're Christian Zionists? Dude, I know you call yourself a Christian, but last time I checked, Christian ideology was rooted in Judaism. You know that guy, Jesus? Pretty sure he had something to do with it, and pretty sure he liked Israel, because where did he live? Just tell me you don't understand your religion and you're just doing things for the clicks without telling me you don't understand your religion and you're doing things for the clicks. How do I know more about this than you do? And the problem we're seeing following this interview is battle lines are being drawn on the right. People are saying, yeah, I agree with Tucker Carlson. I agree with Nick Fuentes, the white supremacist. Yeah, Mike Huckabee, terrible guy, horrible guy, Christian Zionist, horrible people. Tucker Carlson is dividing the right. This is the same guy who shilled for Putin, who went to a Russian grocery store. Look how amazing that, wow, it's incredible, the Russian grocery store. What is the motivation here? It's to divide the right. There can be no other reason for it. Tucker Carlson, who just spoke at Charlie Kirk's funeral. Tucker Carlson, who was featured at Turning Point USA. Tucker Carlson, who is being invited back to Turning Point USA. I'm kind of curious what direction Turning Point USA is going in right now, because I wonder if they're being dragged by the Tucker Carlsons of the world in a direction they don't want to go. Before Charlie Kirk died, he said he didn't want to get rid of Tucker Carlson because he wanted all opinions out there. But, you know, eventually Turning Point USA did get rid of Candace Owens. I wonder what would have happened if Charlie had lived longer. Would he have kept Tucker Carlson around when he keeps spewing this kind of vitriol? When he keeps spewing this stuff out there? Because it's beyond crazy. Charlie Kirk said he didn't want Nick Fuentes as part of Turning Point USA, blocked him from coming to the conventions. And yet Tucker Carlson, who claims he's speaking for Turning Point USA, who's on one of their tours right now, said, come on my show. We'll have you on. No problem whatsoever. This is the guy he had on his show.
I think a lot of people are starting to find out Charlie Kirk is not the patriot that he says he is. And so I look at what happened last night, and I think to myself, this is totally a doable operation. You know, Charlie Kirk in the grand scheme of things is just some retarded idiot. The dog is terrified. I had to go upstairs and reassure him because I'm screaming at my screen, calling Charlie Kirk a bitch and everything. The contrast could not be more clear. Charlie Kirk is a totally unexceptional human being.
That's the guy that Tucker Carlson platformed last night. After his friend, Charlie Kirk, was assassinated. That's who Tucker Carlson platformed last night. And what's the upside? It wasn't to debate him. It wasn't to have a discussion, an argument with him. It wasn't to disprove him. It was to agree with him. And what's killing me is people in my own world are saying, we don't want to talk about what's going on with Tucker Carlson. You don't attack the right. You know the problem with saying you don't attack the right? You end up like the left. The left, the big lie about the left is the left never attacks the left. That's not true. They attack each other all the time. They just vote in one voice most of the time, where they try to get rid of the people who don't agree with them, like John Fetterman. The problem with the left is when you say we don't attack the left, then immediately what happens is you start being dragged more and more and more to the radical side by the radicals in your party because you didn't call them out. Kamala Harris never called out the Hamasniks in her party. She never called out any of the Antifa, anything else. And the people said, we just want to return to normal. And so many people on the right are not calling out the people on the far right who are now trying to do the exact same thing with the party. This isn't an open tent, oh, there's space enough for everybody, including the guy who celebrates Stalin's birthday and knows it offhand, or the guy who thinks Hitler is so blanking cool, or the guy who does everything he possibly can to undermine Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk. No. You say, that is too far for us. But instead, you're seeing similarities between what Zoran Mamdani is doing to the left and what Tucker Carlson is doing to the right. And the goal is to divide, divide, divide. You can come, you can't. You can come, you can't. And exclude so many people. Because they're Jewish? Because they're Christians? Why? Because they don't like Putin? What's the reason? What's going on here? What's the motivation? I am scared for the right because when it seemed like we had unity after the election, I don't think people realized that Charlie Kirk was one of the great unifiers. And now that we don't have him anymore, people are trying to interpret what he meant, what he said, what did it mean, what was going on here, what was going on there. Turning Point USA was more powerful than the Republican Party. Turning Point USA was the Republican Party. It's cool. It's fun. It makes politics awesome. They got fire on stage. But now you've got guys like Turning Point USA. You've got guys like Tucker Carlson repping Turning Point USA. And I'm scared that they're being drawn in a really bad direction. Them saying we don't want Nick Fuentes, smart move. Them ending their contract with Candace Owens, smart move. But now you've got Tucker Carlson, who's still hanging around and dividing the party. And when we go into elections like this, you know how we're going to end up? Like Washington State gubernatorial races, where we start having purity tests. You know, oh, you're not MAGA enough. You're not this enough. You remember all that? I don't want to do that nationally. It's bad enough we had to do that here. You want to do that nationally? We are going to lose if we do that. And what's the motivation here? Is Tucker doing it for the clicks? Is Tucker doing it because he's being paid by somebody else? Or is it just because he's a jerk and everybody's finally figuring that out? I never liked him when he was on CNN. I said when he got fired from Fox News, he's going to be a big deal on the internet. And a few times I've said, well, I guess I was wrong. He's not that big a deal of the internet. Turns out now he's a pretty big deal on the internet. Unfortunately, it's not for the reason I thought it was going to be. Unfortunately, it's because he's platforming the white supremacists and the Holocaust deniers and anybody he can think of to demonize Christians and Jews as a guy who calls himself a Christian. And if we keep having this battle, this fight, you're going to alienate more and more people on the right who you just got for this election, who left the left because they were such anti-Semitic, Hamas-loving crazies. And then you come to this side and you go, there's a white supremacist being interviewed by Tucker Carlson. I am concerned about the direction this is going in. Let me know what you think. 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, lots of your calls, lots of your texts. Plus, Katie Wilson finally responds to the expose that outed her and her husband as living off their parents. We'll give you all details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder to download the KVI app and subscribe on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. That way you never miss a minute of the show. In fact, while you're there, share it with your friends so they never miss a minute of the show as well. Our friend Matt over on the text line says, I'm going to need a shower after all those Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson clips. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely, it's that bad. And I got to say something else, by the way. In case I didn't make it clear before, I love Turning Point USA. I love going to their conventions. I always say, every time I come back from a Turning Point USA convention, I always say how inspired I am that the next generation of Americans are going to be the ones, these kids, who decide to, instead of going somewhere for winter break, on vacation, skiing, or the Bahamas, or whatever, decide to go to a political conference. I always come back inspired from that. I'm concerned about the future because of what I'm seeing about the people they have speaking to these kids like Tucker Carlson. That's what I'm concerned about. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Ian in Tacoma. Ian, what's going on, man?
You know, Stalin's popular, hating Jews is popular again. I'm just trying to figure out what year it is because it feels like we're a lot closer to 1930 than 2030.
Doesn't it seem like that? It's a little crazy, right? It seems like this stuff is cyclical, and it just keeps coming back and coming back and coming back. It's nuts, by the way. What did you think of those clips?
Oh, it's absolutely disgusting. It doesn't shock me, though. In Russia, there's polls that have come out stating that Stalin's popular among people in about their 20s, 30s, and younger, and increasing in popularity again. I can't go on any social media. It's harder to find stuff that isn't anti-Semitic than it is to find anti-Semitic stuff these days. It doesn't matter where you go. It's everywhere.
It seems like that's the stuff that the algorithm is prioritizing, which I have other concerns about that as well. But I really see it as an attempt to divide the right. I really see that going on right here, where it's like the right is finally unified, and you've got all these 80-20 issues, and now it seems like they're trying to use this as a wedge issue. Ian, appreciate the perspective, appreciate the call, appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. We go back to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Howard in Woodinville. Howard, what's up, man?
Hey, Ari. I don't want to be like Tucker Carlson and divide MAGA, but anyway, I'm going to borrow from the let them theory a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought about this since the election in 2020 when Biden won. I don't see – I almost want to support – well, not support, but I'd like to just go ahead and let Mamdani win and take over for a while. And I'm going to base that on what happened with Biden, the reason Kamala probably can't win, the reason Newsom probably can't win, and what happened those 4 years when Trump lost. And I was thinking then that maybe it's a good thing he lost because he was so bogged down at the time. I think 4 years went by, and look what's happening now. But that's kind of a secondary to my theory about, let him, because it's going to – I would think it'd be a big smackdown just like it was with Biden. I know there's repercussions, and
right. Here's the problem.
You'll fill me in on that.
Here's what I think, Howard. Here's the problem. When you get somebody like de Blasio termed out. That was it. De Blasio went all the way for however many terms they get in New York. And you got stuck with de Blasio that long. Look at all the disaster Joe Biden caused that Trump has to spend half his presidency fixing all that. I hear your point, but think about this for a second. You live here in Washington, right? There was a guy named Jay Inslee who could have kept winning until he decided not to run again. And then there's Bob Ferguson who comes after him. So think about that, and then think about all the problems we're having with judges right now. I mean, I would argue that Seattle has not recovered from Jenny Durkin. I would argue that Seattle has not recovered from Jay Inslee and Jenny Durkin and the Summer of Love. I would argue things haven't gotten much better. I hear your point. The temptation is just let the world burn, and people will figure it out, and things will bounce back. We got lucky it worked out with Donald Trump, because as big of a win it was, it wasn't as big of a win as it should have been. But I hear where you're coming from, Howard. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, more of your calls, more of your texts, plus Katie Wilson's Parent Gate. Oh, dear. Her explanation for why nobody in her house has a job and she's living off her parents, and this is the person who wants to be mayor of Seattle. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KBI. My phones are lighting up like a Christmas tree, and so is the text line. We will get to them, but I did promise you the story about Katie Wilson, who might just be the next Seattle mayor if the polls are to be believed. Now, you remember KUOW outed her as somebody who's living off her parents. Now, I looked up her parents, and I didn't want to drag her parents into any of this because it's not, their daughter said she's running for office, and you know what? My parents didn't ask for me to run for office, so why drag in my parents, for example? But here, she starts bringing her mom into her videos now. And now, if mom agreed to be part of the videos, sorry, mom, you're part of the equation. So let's go over what we found out from KUOW last week. 1, Katie Wilson's husband has chosen not to have a job. So he's a stay-at-home dad. Fine, nothing wrong with that. But then Katie Wilson's got to earn the money. But if you're a stay-at-home dad, why do you need to pay for childcare? Watch the kids. This is a little child. This is not a big child. This child can do childcare at home with dad. And even so, we have this thing called homeschooling, where if you don't want to put the kid in the private school or early education or whatever the case may be, they can get homeschooled, and plenty of people do it. But instead, dad is staying home, not watching the kid. So they're living off her parents, who are very, 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 did I say very? Progressive college professors. Her father wrote a book, Atlas Hugged. Oh, isn't that sweet? Yes, Mike, I found that while you were gone. I found the parents. They are both college professors at Binghamton University. Now, Binghamton in New York is not as progressive as some other universities, so I said, you know what, we'll roll it back. Neither one of them has a big social media presence. But you say, if it's too expensive to live here because you only have one person earning money, only one breadwinner, and they're getting it from a nonprofit that apparently is not very successful and can't fill out their tax forms on time, so I can't even tell you how unsuccessful they are. If that's the case, you don't have to live in a place as expensive as Seattle. There are other places cheaper to live around here. It is not our job to pay for the fact that you made bad financial decisions in your life. So now Katie Wilson is addressing it with a new campaign ad. And none of this excuses the behavior or explains her nonsense.
I'm Katie Wilson, and I'm running for Seattle mayor. I want to address the very first scandal of my political life. Now, I don't have years of experience managing scandals like my opponent does, so bear with me. A few days ago, it felt like everyone in Seattle got this text message from Harold's campaign about me. Mom, did you hear about this?
No. Let's see it. Katie Wilson's campaign built around working class identity, but parents pay her bills? So is this about Josie, my granddaughter's child care? I mean, doesn't he know that child care is really expensive in Seattle, and aren't families supposed to take care of each other?
Stop. Stop right there. I got a family that takes care of each other, and there's nothing wrong with getting help from your family. You know what the problem is? When you're not even trying and you're getting help from your family. Her husband is sitting on his butt at home. He admitted that. She admitted that in the article. He could be watching the kids. You are not entitled to daycare. Guess what daycare is? Somebody watching your child. You can watch your child. We do not have to pay the bills, but we're going to end up paying the bills because one of the first things she's going to do, because her entire campaign is, let's tax a bunch of people so everybody can have free child care. Just watch. That's what it's going to be. I got no problem with getting help from parents. I've gotten tons of help from my in-laws. I've gotten help from my parents. I help out my kids right now. But you know what? I had a job. My wife has a job. My son has a job. In fact, my son, you know what he said to me? The one who's living in a different country in the Army. I pay his bills for his apartment. He said, Dad, you don't have to pay for my apartment anymore. The Army's paying me and I have a job now. And I said, but I want to help you out. I want to help you out. And he goes, no, Dad, I don't want to take the money anymore. You want to give me some spending cash? That's fine. Which, okay, that's how it's supposed to go.
And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. No, that's awesome because that he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. Like you and your wife and your family have instilled with him the values to be a productive adult, and he's doing the thing. Also, though, with Ari Hoffman, Family Man, not running for public office.
That too.
Well, currently.
Okay, no plans. There are no. But you're trying to get me divorced here?
No, I meant in the past.
Oh, okay. I'm with you. Yeah.
Nobody's favorite failed city council candidate, the bouncy house tycoon.
The bouncy house tycoon. Oh my God! By the way, I wrote some comments about all this on this video, and they're all in on the bouncy house tycoon thing. I haven't responded to any of them, but I want to be like,
what year is this?
Well, not just that, like our previous caller. Not just that, but. So you're mad I had a company. You're mad I had a successful living, unlike your candidate, who's running a failed nonprofit that endorses radical lunatics. You're the transit riders union that endorsed the lady who wanted to blow up a bus filled with children. Right, but I'm the problem. It's me, because I guess I want to blow up stuff too as the bouncy house tycoon, right? Okay, I'm just making sure I got that. Holy cow, people are absolutely nuts and crazy. Go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Ron in Tacoma. Ron, what's up, man?
Yeah, here we go again, electing more people that are homeless and don't know how to do their job, even before they've even... here we go again. There's no hope for this state. You realize that, right?
You know what? I kind of wonder where rock bottom is, Ron. And let me go through my psyche with you for a second. I thought rock bottom was the homeless situation before COVID. Then I thought it was bad during COVID. Then I thought the autonomous zone was bad. I don't know where rock bottom is for this state anymore.
Well, all I know is what you were talking about later. The Republican Party is doing a really good job at dividing itself because about a year or two ago, I kept calling the Republican Party because I was so furious about what Biden was doing to our country. And I was always complaining, why are you not filing restraining orders? Why are you not doing all the things the Democrats get away with every year? And lo and behold, they said, well, we use the money because we need it for the elections.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you right there, Ron, but I'm going to stop you for not the reason you think, okay? What do you think has more power right now politically, Turning Point USA or the GOP?
I don't know right now.
Okay, I'll say Turning Point USA. I'll still say Turning Point USA more than the GOP.
I would hope you're right.
Okay.
I hope you're right.
I'm going to say for now, I believe that. I truly believe that. So if people are so mad and all we get are phone calls all day long about how mad they are at the GOP, then what's stopping anybody from doing what Brian Haywood did with Let's Go Washington? And you don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to have tons of money in order to do something like that. You just have to be able to get people, get friends to go out and do an issue that lots of people agree with. Let's Go Washington, I would argue right now, is more powerful than the GOP in Washington state. I would truly argue that right now. And it's good that Jim Walsh works with Brian Haywood. But I would argue right now that the GOP here in Washington state right now is Let's Go Washington because they're the ones doing the 80-20 issues. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, polling is out on the shutdown. Who's winning the argument? Plus more of your calls, more of your texts. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. You remember what I said? The shutdown will end when we see what the poll numbers look like? Well, the shutdown is still going on, and we're on track to have the longest shutdown ever in history. But I'm looking at the poll numbers, and right now it is favoring the GOP. A little bit. Hasn't moved much, but it is favoring the GOP. So by the poll numbers, the GOP is winning this. However, both parties are also losing this. Because right now there are people who may not get paid. There are people who are not getting paid. And as a result of that, people don't like that very much. GOP overall, their shift in net popularity versus pre-shutdown, according to CNN, is up 2 points. GOP in Congress is up 5 points. Change in GOP in Congress net approval versus pre-shutdown. GOP is up 12 points. Independents, you're up 8 points. Conversely, Democrats are dropping. They were up 11 points. Now they're only up 3 points, which means they are losing this. I saw a headline right before we went on air today, Mike, which is Marjorie Taylor Greene says Trump is losing support in Congress. What? Another one who's trying to divide the GOP. It's another one. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's see the battle lines we got here, right? You've got Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Tim Pool. That's the team you want to be on, guys? Really? You know, I was really upset going into the show today. Mike knows this, about how the GOP is tearing itself apart right when we're snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Your calls today have been great. You can call and disagree with me. I'm not telling you you can't, and we can argue things out. Because unlike Tucker Carlson, I'm not just going to say, you're right, you're right, you're right. Okay? We will argue things out if we disagree. But the fact that all of you seem to be so common sense really gives me a little bit of, as we call it, chizuk, a little bit of strength here. It really makes me feel a little bit better about that. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from our friend Mario in Kent. Mario, what's going on, man?
Hey, Ari, my friend, you just need to go outside and laugh a little bit, you know? Don't get anything. I was listening to Mike, and when I called Mike, I told him, Ari's got too serious. Listen, the GOP is going to do great. Turning Point USA is going to do great. Like I was telling Mike, Turning Point USA needs to be run by young people. And today, like Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida announced that he was going to sign a declaration saying that chapters of Turning Point USA will be allowed to be created in all schools in Florida, all public schools. And if they try to give them a hard time, he was not sure that those people were prosecuted or legally taken care of. And this is the other thing I'll tell you, my good friend, as a Republican, and I can tell you, or as a conservative, and even independents that think for themselves, we don't go and listen to like Tucker Carlson and all that. We listen to everybody, and then we go do our own research, and we come out to our own conclusions. We just don't vote for somebody because they have an R or a D behind their name. And I can tell you honestly, because I'll be an honest man, and I'll tell you, back when I was a younger man, 18 years old, I could have easily voted for Scoop Jackson for president because he shared values that I totally agree with. He was a conservative Democrat. Grant you, those guys don't exist anymore in the Democratic. Scoop will be considered a radical by today's
Right.
standards.
He'd be considered a Republican by today's standards. You know, Mario, I'm so happy you called because you put a smile on my face. You put a little bounce in my step, and you made me realize there is hope, as depressing as things are. After the show today, I am going to go outside. I am going to take a deep breath, and I am going to smile. And I'll make more jokes like the Spaceballs one at the beginning of it. We got lots more of that coming up, as a matter of fact, my man. Thank you for the phone call. Thank you for being part of the show today. Thank you for putting a smile on my face. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, there is a bombshell scandal that is now rocking Washington State and what's happening with your taxpayer dollars. Question is anything going to happen now that it's been revealed? We'll give you the full story and all the insanity when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Well, it's official. Washington officials want the homeless crisis to get infinitely worse, including people getting hit by garbage trucks. I kid you not. We'll tell you all about that later, but right now, there's a story that broke yesterday, and now Washington legislatures are calling for a full investigation. Washington Senate Republican leader John Braun is calling for a sweeping investigation and accountability after a bombshell expose revealed that taxpayer money intended to expand minority homeownership in Washington state may have been misused for personal gain. The investigation by our friend Brandy Cruz, host of the Undivided podcast, centered on the Community Reinvestment Program, a $200 million initiative launched by Democrat-led legislature in 2022 and managed by the State Department of Commerce. Stop. Hold. I need to remind everybody what this program is. This is what we call soft reparations. What do I mean by that? They want to do a reparations program without saying it was a reparations program. So what they come up with, this community homeownership nonsense, what was it? It was if you were redlined, we're going to do a study on redlining. Let's do a study on redlining. Let's do it in Seattle. Okay, who is redlined in Seattle? Let's see. The Jews and the blacks and the Italians and the Japanese and, look, basically anybody who's not white. Okay, great. So they're the ones we want to give reparations to. Not so fast Jews, not so fast Asians, not so fast Italians, not so fast anybody else. Just the blacks and the Hispanics we're going to give. So automatically right off the bat, it's racist. The Community Reinvestment Program was really a reaction to the George Floyd insanity, where it's let's give as much money as we can to all these different groups so they can get free things to apologize for how racist we were. Let's do that. The program was created to uplift communities disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs. Okay, I got a question here. Are we doing drug treatment? Why do you think just money is going to fix this? You should say, okay, we're doing drug treatment. If you guys really wanted to uplift communities disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs, why are you giving out drug paraphernalia on the streets of Washington? Why are you letting drug dealers operate here? Why are you allowing the drugs into our state in the first place? Why are you allowing in illegal aliens? They received another $50 million in the 2025-2027 budget cycle, despite a $15 billion state deficit. That was on top of the $200 million initiative that they launched in 2022. So, Cruz's investigation was sparked by Corey Orvold, a real estate broker and former journalist who spent nearly a year documenting abuses in the program. Orvold, initially a supporter of the program, compiled a binder of evidence showing that individuals connected to BIPOC-focused nonprofits had awarded themselves or family members hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxpayer aid. Immediately, when I saw what was going on before I read the whole article, I said, this has got to be the reparations program, right? This has got to be the reparations program. And that's exactly what it was. Here's something else, by the way. This also reminded me of BLM. Where'd all the money from BLM go? Tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars raised. And the founders, leaders of BLM, used it to buy themselves houses. Didn't help the black community. In fact, they started getting sued by their own chapters, saying, we raised all this money. Where's the money? Show me the money. One prominent nonprofit, the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, allegedly distributed six-figure sums in down payment assistance to its own staff and associates, even as it claimed funds had run out for other applicants. Among them, Aisha Williams, who received nearly $350,000 in state-funded homebuyer assistance to purchase a $425,000 Tacoma home. Her mother, Angela Williams, a Urban League director of financial empowerment, was one of the officials administering the funds. Oh, you want your kid to get a house? Isn't that nice? Here's $350,000 of taxpayer money. By the way, last time I checked, they weren't giving out that much in deposits. It was a lot, but it wasn't that much. So think of all the people that could have helped who they didn't help because they gave it all to somebody's daughter. Ariana Gold, An Urban League housing counselor was awarded nearly $50,000 in taxpayer money to pay off personal debt. By the way, were any of these people affected by the drug war? Were any of them affected? I love how the media, by the way, is freaking out over Trump blowing up the narco-terrorist books. Now, all of a sudden, they're like, did you do due process? Well, if we have a war on drugs, then we're finally fighting the war on drugs. Do you give due process to every enemy combatant you meet on the battlefield? No, you don't. Why are they running these boats? Oh, I'm sure they were just water skiing. Right, Mike? They were just water skiing. And believe me, the one thing I know better than bouncy houses, water skiing. I guarantee you, those giant scarabs that they use in Baywatch that would rip your arms out of the sockets if you try to water ski behind them, those are definitely, they're just on a trip. They're just on a trip because everybody I know who's recreationally using a boat, by the way, they always go from South American countries to America. I know that. I see it happen. I talk to my friends all the time who have boats. Yeah, that's right. Me and my friends, we always talk about our boats because we're boating people. And we always go, when's the last time you went over to Asia? Took that boat on over there, sailed on across the ocean. We did that in a scarab-looking boat. Are you kidding me?
For funsies.
For funsies. I just want to see how fast I can open it up in the giant waves of the ocean. Giant waves. Yes, this is crazy, by the way.
Please,
Absolutely
will somebody consider the sweet cherub-faced drug runners that were blowing out of the damn water?
Yes.
Boo-hoo-hoo. Oh. It would move me to tears if I still had tears to shed for the sweet cherub-faced drug runners.
I missed you so much, man. This is great. Oh, the drug runners. Yes, let's all pour one out for my homies. Okay, yeah, there we go. The drug runners. Give me a break with this nonsense. Here, got something for you. Ready? Here we go. Where are their families suing the U.S. government for blowing up their loved ones who are on fishing trips? Where's that? If there were a whole bunch of people going, hey, you blew up my son and he was just out there, the media would run with that immediately, right? It'd be like that boat Clark Kent was on in the Zack Snyder verse, right? You blew up Clark. There's one man and he saved us all in the oil rig. He didn't have a shirt. It was weird. There's like digital fire coming off him. But, you blew up our fishermen. I can't. But I digress. Back to compensating people for the war on drugs. Let's get back to that for a second. Tracy Brown, another beneficiary, allegedly received $245,000 in public funds while her nonprofit partnered with the Urban League to promote the same program she profited from. Meanwhile, families who applied through official channels were often turned away or told funds had run out. Do you realize the grift? They call us grifters, Mike. Look at this. This is nuts and bonkers crazy. So, the Department of Commerce, which oversees the CRP, confirmed it is reviewing allegations of misconduct. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to review those just like they reviewed the allegations against Nick Brown and Coy Perkins and all that insanity with the law firm that he was doing things he shouldn't have been doing for. And then as soon as the media starts asking about it, we're dropping the case. You'll have somebody from the Center Square on this week to give you an update on all that. Commerce Director Joe Wynn, who co-sponsored the bill, creating the CRP before joining Governor Bob Ferguson's cabinet, acknowledged problems with accountability. He said, what we found when I came in wasn't acceptable. We're taking action. You know what this reminds me of, Mike? In the second Batman movie, the Christopher Nolan one, The Dark Knight, when they say, do you have any leads on who the Batman is? And they go, yes, the investigation is ongoing. And there's like a picture of Elvis or whatever it is up on the wall, right? That's what this reminds me of. The investigation is ongoing. Yeah, so you're telling me the guy who set up this program to fail in the first place is now going to be the one responsible for investigating it? Hey, Joe, while you're investigating things, would you mind investigating for me where all my gas money is going? Because you also supported the Climate Commitment Act, and you knew that was a grift. You sat in that chair right there in this studio and lied to us. We had Todd Myers sitting across from you. We had the two of you debating the Climate Commitment Act. Todd was right on everything. You were either wrong or lying. Do you trust Joe Wynn to actually investigate any of this? How about no? Thank you, Dr. Evil. Good to have you back. Mike, can you do me a favor and remind me to reach out to Mr. Wynn, to ask him not just about this, but, hey, it's been a couple of years since we had you on about the Climate Commitment Act. You want to come back and talk about it and give me gas money? The Attorney General's office has also reportedly contacted Orvold following her whistleblower disclosures, though officials declined to confirm or deny an investigation. What are you guys, the FBI? We refuse to comment on ongoing investigations. The Urban League has denied wrongdoing, citing privacy concerns and saying all recipients met eligibility requirements, but the organization has refused to disclose a list of relatives who benefited from CRP funds. You know what I think, boys? Public disclosure request time. I bet you Brandy's already filed one. But you know what? We'll do it anyway. So, Senator John Braun said the revelations expose what happens when government programs divide people by race. Quote, corruption thrives wherever government decides certain people get special treatment and others don't. When public money is hijacked by self-serving operators, every Washingtonian pays the price. He's 100% correct. He announced that Senate Republicans will introduce legislation to eliminate race-based housing, impose strict oversight on nonprofits receiving state funds, and enforce performance standards to ensure aid reaches families in need rather than insiders. I don't want to make this about the Jewish thing, by the way, but I am happy to be called up as an example of this because my wife's family was literally redlined, can prove that they were redlined, and they're not eligible for this program. And I don't say that so that we get money. Look, I'm not going to turn down free money, but I don't want free taxpayer money. I'm using this to show how racist this program is because in the study they used to establish this, they specifically call out the Jewish community. And now you guys are saying the Jews aren't eligible for this? It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Braun said the lack of transparency underscores why legislative oversight is needed. He said this is about more than wasting money. It's about stolen hope from families counting on a fair chance to build a future. You know what I did in my synagogue, by the way, when this came out? I was looking for people who want to sue Washington State over this law. So I went to people in my synagogue who I know just got married or are renting, and I said, hey, would you like the government to pay for you to get this deposit? And they said, absolutely. I go, too bad you're Jewish. That's what I said. I said, you want to sue over this? You want to be a plaintiff? Unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want to put themselves in the spotlight. And they were worried how much it was going to cost them to sue. Is it going to offset any losses? Even though I said, I'm sure we can get somebody pro bono. But these people had hope. These people hope for a house. Everybody hopes for a house. I think what it should be is open to anybody. Let's bankrupt Washington State. Let's do it. Just open this up to everybody. No, you know what I think it is? If you want to do a home buyer loan program, it should be open to anybody. It should be open to anybody who wants a leg up. You can't afford that, though. So instead, you decide to help your friends because they've been marginalized. But then, not these people who've been marginalized. It was racist from the get-go. Orvold continues to face retaliation for exposing the scandal, says she only wants accountability. She says it's been misused. It's enriched certain people. I don't think this is ever what it was meant to do, and to me, that's heartbreaking. Which, by the way, I totally hear where she's coming from. I'm going to share Brandy's interview with her tonight on my social media channels, Ari Hoffman Official on Facebook and Instagram, the Hofffather over on Twitter, and the latest details from Senator John Braun. But why do we need legislation to fix this? You don't need legislation to fix this. You need somebody you can trust to do the investigation. You're going to trust the guy who set the thing up? You're going to trust the Democrats who set this thing up to fail? At 4:30 today, we have Representative Travis Couture coming on the show. He's going to talk about a lot of things, but one of the things he's going to address with regards to this is how he saw all this coming and proposed legislation to make sure this didn't happen. And the Democrats went ahead with it anyway. Look, you want to push your radical agenda? Can you make sure your radical agenda is going to the right people and not being used and funneled to people who shouldn't be getting it? It's a small ask. It's a small request, guys. I'm not saying don't have your radical agenda. But if you're going to do it, can you make sure there's no fraud in your radical agenda? Here's something else. This is one program. This is a $200 million program in our massive billions and billions and billions of dollar budget. How many other programs have this? You know what I haven't heard of in a long time? Do you remember this, Mike? This goes back to the early days of the Ari Hoffman Show. Do you remember they defunded the police department? And then they started funneling the money to groups that were inside the autonomous zone. And then we found out that money was being funneled to people like Nikita Oliver's nonprofits, far-left radicals through Tammy Morales' office. And do you remember those reports just went away. Anybody ever investigate that? No, new mayor, new people. Nope, it's just gone. Well, there's a new election cycle coming up. And what happens? You know what's going to happen in the legislative session? Here's what I'm worried about, Mike, because this is what's been happening the entire time I've been on air. Republicans are so in damage control. What crazy thing have the Democrats proposed that they have to go fight that thing, and battles like this get lost in the process? For example, we know that Tara Simmons is going to come out with her, hey, let's free everybody in jail. In fact, we're going to put the Green River Killer next to a school, right? You know, something like that, some crazy bill like that is going to be proposed by her, and we're going to spend a whole bunch of airtime talking about how crazy it is, and we're going to forget things like this. We can't forget things like this. I got to say, this is amazing reporting by Brandy over at Undivided. And really, kudos to this woman, Orvold, for coming forward with the whistleblower report, with all the details, with all the paperwork. I worry what's going to happen with her. I worried, is the state going to go after her that went after the guy from the Department of Transportation who exposed what was going on with the Climate Commitment Act? Do you remember what they did to him? They took away his pension. They took away everything he could possibly have. They ruined his credibility. And the guy had to leave. The guy had to resign. And he was a guy who wanted the Climate Commitment Act. He just wanted to be transparent about what it was going to do. And they silenced him. They shut him down. It's crazy to me that even King 5 was sticking up for this guy because they wanted the same data he wanted. They wanted the Climate Commitment Act to be a success. This is just a tiny sliver of the corruption that's probably going on here in Washington that we don't know anything about. But here's something. Where'd all the money for the light rail go? Where'd all that money go? Now they're raising our taxes to cover the light rail. Where'd all that money go? How many other grifts do we not know about? How many other grifts are going on that are taking our taxpayer money? This is what you get when you have one-party rule. You can abuse the system to benefit your political buddies. And the Urban League, big Democrat supporters. Why do you think this was done? To pay off your political friends. You remember what happened when Joe Biden first got elected? Every spending bill was, who can we reward for helping us get elected? Every single spending bill that the Congress passed with Joe Biden. Every single one. Who could we pay off? The Inflation Reduction Act. All it did was jack up inflation so they could pay off all their green energy buddies and all their union buddies and everything else. This is no different. This is no different. And Bob Ferguson is going to come to all of us in December or November. November, probably before the holidays. He's already started doing it. We have $1 billion deficit. We have a $2 billion deficit. Oh, no, wait, it's 4, it's 5, it's 6, it's 10, it's 12, just like they did last year. You know how we solve that? Taxes, taxes, taxes. That's how we solve this. Because that's the only thing they know. Not, hey, let's cut out the waste, fraud, and abuse. Hey, maybe we don't need to spend money so everybody has a house. Maybe we should actually spend responsibly. Like we were warned back in 2019 by the Republicans, if you keep spending like this, you're going to run into trouble eventually. Maybe. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Chris in Lake Stevens. Chris, what's going on? Hello, Chris.
Hey, Ari.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Hey, I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on in Minneapolis in Minnesota with all the fraud that they have with feeding the children during the COVID shutdowns. They've got multiple people that they've indicted, pled guilty. Maybe this needs to go to and it's being ran by the DOJ back there in Minneapolis.
You know what? That's a great idea. I'm going to ask Brandy. Mike, here's another thing. Please email me to remind me about this. To email Brandy and ask her if she reached out to the Department of Justice about this for investigation. This should be investigated by the Department of Justice. You know what, Chris? That is a great, great call. I'm definitely going to reach out and ask her if she did that. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, Washington officials want homelessness to get worse. So bad, in fact, that a homeless guy was just plowed into by a garbage truck. We'll tell you all about it when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, by the way, if you missed any part of the show, make sure you download the app, subscribe to the podcast, so that way it doesn't happen again. We want to make sure you listen to every minute of the Ari Hoffman Show, and rate, subscribe, and share while you're there on the podcast, so that way your friends can enjoy it as well. According to Como News, police said a homeless man was killed in an accident involving a yard waste recycling truck in Seattle's East Lake neighborhood at 6:05 a.m. on Tuesday. Patrol officers were called to a report of a recycling truck running over a man. Timeout, stop here. I feel bad for the driver. I truly feel bad for the driver. Mike, we come downtown every single day. How many near misses would you say you have in a week with somebody drugged out or out of their minds crazy? I have to say it's at least twice a week, not a day. About twice a week, I'd say I have a near miss, or I see something in the street that shouldn't be in the street, or I have to go out of the way for something like that. About twice a week?
Yeah, I'm about the same. It's usually what it is it's when I'm like going down the street and I see somebody got the nods on the corner.
Yeah.
And it's like, are they going to dart? Or are they just going to weave? That's kind of where my near misses are. It's like, I see somebody like waiting at the signal. Are they really going to cross? Or are they going to wait until the signal changes and then cross?
Yeah.
Every once in a while, because I sometimes stay later at night, every once in a while I'll see somebody like shambling across the street, that kind of thing. And sometimes they'll stop. So yeah, but I'm with you. I'd probably say no more than 3 a week.
Sure.
For me.
So you're going to laugh. I don't drive like a maniac anymore in downtown Seattle. 2 reasons. Number 1, the Belltown Hellcat. I don't want everybody coming after me thinking I'm him. Okay, he's back. No, I don't want that. Number 2 is that there's too many things you can hit in the streets. And you know where it's really bad? When I sometimes go on Fifth Avenue to go home under the the monorail, and somebody's standing behind one of the columns and they just walk out into traffic. That's the worst place, and it's always somebody who's not conscious of what the traffic signals are doing. And these aren't people staggering out of the 5 points or something like that, the bar. These are people full on fentanyl, whatever it is going on.
Well, and not to yank the subject a different direction, but it's tourists also. Like I got a little triggered when you mentioned the Fifth Avenue monorail thing. During the summer, I would have like knucklehead tourists like zip in front of me on those scooters, like from behind the column.
Oh yeah,
it's like that is a good way to get dead real quick.
The death scooters, the death mobiles, we get that a lot. But the other thing is Westlake Center. When I take 4th Avenue to get to work sometimes, I'm taking 4th Avenue by the abandoned Starbucks, where there used to be a Starbucks, but they closed because there's crime in Seattle at Westlake right over there. There's always people hanging out over there, and sometimes they just walk into traffic. That's the other place I always have problems. Those 2 areas especially, and it's getting worse. It's not getting better. And I feel bad because this garbage man who was just doing his job at 6:05 in the morning, remember, isn't expecting somebody to just wander into the street. And now he has to deal with for the rest of his life that he killed somebody. That's all. Now he has to deal with that. Seattle Fire Department medics arrived, but were unable to save the man's life. Como News video from the scene showed a Cedar Grove truck and dumpsters inside the area cordoned off with police tape. Seattle Police Department Traffic Collision Investigation Squad documented the scene. It was determined that a homeless man was lying in front of the garbage and recycling dumpsters in the middle of a dead-end street when he was accidentally run over by the truck. You just can't see it. You just can't see it. There was no signs of impairment on the driver, and the county medical examiner will identify the victim and determine the cause and manner of death. Gee, what do you think the cause and manner of death is in this case? But now, this guy's got to deal with it. You know what the problem is? Our officials don't want to solve the homeless crisis. You know why they don't want to solve it? Because then they stop getting money for it. Then they can't tax us anymore. For example, normally you do whatever it takes to keep the business community happy. That's what politicians do. Keep the business community happy, and they will fund your campaign. They will fund your PACs. They will tell people to go vote for you. Not here. According to Como News, a homeless encampment has reestablished near the I-705 overpass in Tacoma, which city workers cleared just weeks ago. And business owners say the same problems are repeating all over again. In September, more than 40 people were living in tents and vehicles along a green space on A Street and an area south of South 24th Street and Dock Street. Workers at surrounding businesses say they witnessed routine drug dealing and violence, including machete fights. Machete! Episodes of violence and persistent safety concerns convinced city leaders in Tacoma to clear out the encampment on September 9th. At the time, people who work in the area were assured the city's homelessness engagement and alternatives liaison, the HEAL team, would monitor the site for the next 12 months to prevent it from being repopulated. Whoopsies! Hang on a second. So September 9th, we're at October 28th. Well done, guys. Really well. Wow, 6 weeks. 6 weeks. 7 weeks. Well done, everybody. I'll give you the full 7 weeks. I don't think that's 12 months. That's just a guess. People also report a ramp-up of drug activity or worried about crime and violence may not be far behind. Oh, you think? Business owners said the past problems were more than some nuisance because customers started staying away out of safety concerns. They are urging the city to intervene and help those who are camping before the situation escalates. Previously, city officials said they received about 100 reports regarding ongoing health and safety risks, as well as the obstruction of public spaces. Workers with HEAL spent a month providing intensive daily outreach to the residents of the camp. Como News reached out to city officials to see how they are responding to the most recent concerns being raised, and will update the story when more information becomes available. You know the problem? There's not going to be more information. Would you like to know why? Because the city officials are in the middle of an election cycle. And if they're not clearing this thing out now, they have no plans to clear it out. Normally, in the middle of an election cycle, you want to get reelected, so you show people that you can actually handle the problems. They don't want to handle the problems because that means they can't tax you. That means that they lose out on federal funding. That means that they have to give up on Homeless Inc. They're not going to deal with it because that means they have to deal with Antifa and mutual aid and anybody who comes along with a homeless sweep. Tell me what you think caused this for a minute here. In Everett, according to Como News, crews put out a fire that destroyed some playground equipment at an Everett Park on Monday. Crews arrived at Wiggum's Hollow Park to find the equipment fully involved in flames. Weird phraseology there. They said it's closed until further notice. The fire is being investigated. Why do you think the playground equipment spontaneously combusted? Oh, I know. They were filming the next Terminator movie, and they needed the opening of all the creepy stuff after the nuclear holocaust so John Connor can fight against the robots. That's why, yes, it spontaneously combusted. No, that's what it was. Methinks it was a homeless person. Just a guess. Just a guess. When we come back, my friends, Travis Couture will be joining us to the latest scandal rocking the Democrat Party here in Washington and what's being done about it. Give you all details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. My friends, it has been an absolutely insane past 48, 72 hours here in Washington State in the world of politics. And somebody who's actually been bringing a whole lot of it to the forefront is our friend, Representative Travis Couture from the Washington State Legislature, who joins us now on the Warrior Injury Law Studio line. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, Ari. You know I love kicking a good hornet's nest.
Well, let's start with the most hot button one, which I can't believe our local media hasn't picked up. So apparently Democrats in our area like hiring convicted child rapists for their campaign?
Yeah, I mean, it should shock us, but of course we see this happening often now. So there was an article by Charlie Harger in Cairo 7 about Joshua Headley, a convicted child rapist, and it kind of centered around the Auburn mayor. And this was a great article. It was like a 25-minute read. It was very in-depth. But, you know, at the end of the day, it still left a lot more of the story left on the table. And that is that this individual, Joshua Headley, who's a convicted child rapist, has been being utilized by a lot of Thurston County Democrats in Thurston County to do services for campaigns for school board and city council and even levy campaigns for public schools. And I don't know about you, Ari. I could probably imagine what you think about it, but I can't think of any better example of a complete lack of judgment than to hire a convicted child rapist to help you on a campaign that is a job that serves children in our schools.
Also, are they going door-to-door, door knocking? So, hey, knock, knock, it's a convicted child rapist on behalf of a Democrat candidate.
I don't know that happened, but what it looks like has happened is that he's doing camera work and photography and media level work for these campaigns, including, I just saw a picture just moments ago of him at a school, a convicted child rapist with a camera next to a school bus at a Yelm public school, taking videos and photographs, assuming that there's going to be kids in that as well. And, you know, obviously that's a violation of Joshua Headley's terms as a registered sex offender here in Washington. But also we're starting to learn that he illegally switched aliases on people, and so they couldn't find out who he was. And you're supposed to, as a registered sex offender, report any aliases that you use, so that can be updated in the sex offender registry. But he didn't never report some of these aliases. So I think places like Yelm Public Schools were kind of caught off guard, not knowing exactly who they hired. However, the bombshell of this whole story is that back on August 25th, Joshua Headley was exposed as he was working for many of these campaigns and candidates at the Thurston County Democrat Central Committee meeting. And they scrubbed their minutes about that conversation about Joshua Headley and just went over and tried to cover it all up anyway. And this is including not just for school board races, but for city council candidates like Ryan Siu and Lacey and Robert Vanderpool, a Democratic socialist over in the Olympia City Council. And so this just kind of goes to the lack of trust people have with the Democratic Party, where they coddle sex offenders. They will even pay them extraordinary sums of money in their campaigns. And then there is a guy named Rob Richards, who is essentially Joshua Headley's handler. He hired him, and he's making incredible amounts of money both in the Olympia region and in Seattle, running Democrat socialist candidates from the legislature all the way down to the local level, and oftentimes sadly successfully. And so it just goes to show a lot of people, especially in Thurston County, especially after the sexually violent predator issues that we've had in Thurston County, in my district, where we had to stop that twice from happening near school grounds and schools and people who've been raped and sexually assaulted, that it just goes to show that in some of these places in Washington, the child rapists have more rights than the rest of us. And so they wanted to cover it up because the election's coming up soon, but we're just finding out about this now, even though they knew about it for a while, since August 25th. And I don't want people to go out to the ballot box and think that they're voting for someone who would hire a child rapist to work on their campaign for a school board.
Well, now it all makes
like Julie Watts and Tumwater.
Right. Now it all makes perfect sense why they want to release all the sex offenders from McNeil Island, because they need campaign staffers, right?
Well, I mean, I guess because they can the money run all the Democratic around here. It just shows a tremendous lack of judgment and also a lack of character. That it would be one thing, Ari, that if this guy changed his alias and pulled the wool over your eyes, and you didn't know who he was when you hired him, you couldn't do a proper background check. Maybe a mea culpa there, that would be forgivable. You just didn't know. You couldn't know. But once they did know on August 25th, and then they tried to hide it and lie about it and cover it all up, that's when they became culpable for having hired a child rapist, a violent child rapist. And as you know, Ari, these sex offenders cannot be reformed. I mean, there's not really a case where they are reformed, and especially the ones that come out of McNeil Island, like the South Hill rapist, Kevin Coe, that's now unconfessed out into our communities. And so it's one thing if they didn't know, but then we know that they did know, at least as far back as August 25th, and then they tried to cover it up.
Oh, that's so messed up. Speaking of cover-ups, let's pivot to Democrats' latest scandal, which is the one that came right after this one. Our friend Brandy Cruz over at the Undivided Podcast broke a story yesterday about how all these nonprofits that are supposed to be helping out people of color are actually helping out their relatives. And apparently you had some legislation around this time that could have stopped a lot of this from happening, which was rejected by the Democrats, and now we know why.
Well, yeah, exactly. And you know, some people ask me, well, how did you know this is coming? And I'm like, well, I know all of this is coming because it's a predictable outcome of how we do contracts and dish out state funds to all these NGOs. Oftentimes, they're either not providing the results that they promised they were going to provide, and that's at the best case scenario. The worst case scenario, they're operating like they did in the covenant home ownership program and community reinvestment program corruptly, where they're trying to enrich themselves and their friends. It is a tale as old as time in Olympia. It seems like if you're well connected in Olympia, you will get what you need despite any deficit or tax increase. But the rest of us get left behind. And so I proposed these two bills because it's a predictable outcome of our system. And what these two bills would have done is, amongst other things, create third-party audits, no more having the same people in state government who award the contracts do the auditing. And we used to have that once upon a time in Washington State before Democrats took a near supermajority here in Olympia, back when we had a majority coalition caucus. So third-party audits, and then we would ask for all the board members to, disclose all sorts of information and then try to give us reports through those third-party audits about the results that they're actually delivering. And Brandy touches on this, and it was a great article, by the way. But this is just one piece out of 1,000, right? And I think that's important for people to know that for whatever you think of this, the corruption that was happening in the program Brandy talked about, she briefly said, hey, there's more to all this, and there is, because we've seen in King County the juvenile rehabilitation and diversion programs and NGOs and all sorts of other things, just total waste, fraud, and abuse. And oftentimes it's because they've gotten some contract or funding through the state. So when I looked over all of the different problems, and Brandy's article about this covenant home ownership and community reinvestment program, which, by the way, House Republicans and Senate Republicans warned multiple times that this exact thing would happen over the last couple of years. And it's exactly what happened. But had we have passed 2058 and 2059, the two bills that I wrote that we're talking about, it would have solved literally every single issue that Brandy brought up in that article. And so those two bills will be automatically reintroduced next session. So those would be at least two good starting points, great reform pieces to reform our state contracts and auditing of NGOs, because this has become a real grift for the Democratic Party here in Olympia. They got all their buddies running these NGOs. They pass them millions of dollars, expect no results in return, and then they enrich themselves. And it's wrong. It's not working for the people of Washington State. And it's one of the reasons why we're continuously in tremendous billion-dollar deficits that cause the Democrats to raise taxes on the rest of us.
Yeah. And I look at these programs, and we knew at the beginning of them, these reparations home ownership programs, that there was going to be a ton of issues when they started saying, well, it's for anybody who was redlined, but not you Jews and not you Asians, only the blacks, right? We knew there were going to be problems right off the bat. Little did we know how deep the corruption was going to go. Representative Travis Couture, thank you so much for joining us today to shed light on all of this, and please keep fighting for all of us in Olympia.
All right, thanks, buddy. Talk
Always
to
a
you soon.
pleasure. You have a good one, man. We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Believe it or not, my friends, we are just 1 week away from Election Day. That's right. You probably have those paper mail-in ballots buried under a whole bunch of propaganda that was sent to you by whichever campaigns are in your area. Most likely, you're looking at these things and going, I don't like any of these people. Well, it's very important to vote this time because, as we all know, the Democrats have a supermajority in Olympia, and there is a chance to actually break it with a new common sense coalition. Joining us now, candidate who's running for state senate in the 5th Legislative District. Chad Magendas, thank you so much for being with us today.
No, it's a pleasure to be here, Ari. Thank you.
We always love having you. So tell me about this common sense coalition that's getting all the ink right now that might be able to break the stranglehold the far left Democrats have on Olympia.
Well, we've got 2 moderate Democrats and 2 moderate Republicans. Michelle Caldier and I are on the Republican side, and Kevin Shields and Amy Wallen are on the Democrat side. And when I served in the legislature, we had a bipartisan legislature. Republicans had control of the Senate, Democrats had control of the House, and so there was a group lovingly called the Roadkill Caucus that was very powerful, and there were moderates from both sides who were able to sway things one side or the other. But the fact that we were in an environment where we had to work together to find that common ground meant that we just naturally had a better work product. But with this one-party rule for the last 8 years, and specifically for the last session when they've had a 3/5 majority in both chambers, there hasn't been a lot of back and forth. They pretty much don't need a single Republican to pass any of their agenda, and they haven't even started talking. So just to break the 3/5 majority is the first step, but to rebuild the Roadkill Coalition and get people, get the agenda driven by moderates rather than the extremes, I think it's the second follow-through piece.
Yeah, and I love that name, Roadkill Coalition, because that's just great. That's great. I'm still relatively new at this. I've only been doing a radio show 5 years. I didn't even know that's what it was called. That's an amazing little piece of trivia there, and really speaks to how you guys can actually get in the way of all the craziness that the Democrats are trying to pass. Now, what I really like about this is it's bipartisan also. Now, the problem is that the far left is labeling anybody who doesn't buy into anything they say hook, line, and sinker as people who are working for Donald Trump, or they're all a bunch of Trumpers. And literally you're talking about 2 Democrats. You think they're doing that just to distract from their failed agenda? Because it seems like Bob Ferguson, all he does is try and blame everything he did on Donald Trump.
Exactly. And I really got to admit, as a Republican, I expected to get abused from the other side of the aisle with all these hit pieces, but they're even more brutal to their own. Amy and Kevin, I would not want to swap positions with them at all. They are just constantly barraged by the far left. And I saw it happen before with the Senate seat was actually it belonged to Mark Mullet for a while. And I actually ran against Mark in 2016 and got 49.7% of the vote. But he was a good moderate. So contrast was difficult in that race. He got challenged from the left. And not only did he get challenged from the left, but he had the governor backing his challenger from the left in 2020. And I actually went out and I was doing independent expenditures to support him, robocalls, things like that, saying, hey, listen, he's a good moderate, and we need good moderates on both sides of the aisle. If I can vote for him when I ran against him, so should you. And I think that year he only won by like 89 votes. So it's brutal for the moderates in the Democratic Party right now. They are just letting them have it.
So tell me about you. Let's stop talking about the coalition for a minute. You're running for office. Tell us why we should vote for you and why I endorsed you and said this is the guy to vote for, because it's your party platform.
I do appreciate that. So I've got some real world experience. I was 12 years in the Navy as a nuke submarine officer, 20 years at Microsoft, 8 years as a CTO at Voter Science, which is a grassroots canvassing company, and then 7 years as a computer science teacher here in the Bellevue School District. So when I served in the legislature, I did 2 terms as ranking member of House Education. I've also been president of the ISCO School Board, too. So I've got a pretty good collection of elected experience. I'm on my 8th Seattle Times endorsement now and have always gotten an outstanding rating from the Municipal League of King County. So I love it when these hit pieces come out, calling me this extreme right candidate. Well, that really doesn't match with the truth. And, I'm proud of my independent voting record. And I mentioned that I had a little bit of problem with contrast when I was running against Mark Mullet. That is definitely not the case this year. My opponent has the most partisan voting record in the whole history of Legislative District 5, going all the way back over 34 years to when they actually started first publishing those results. So, yeah, I'm a good moderate. I'm not extreme in any way. And frankly, we need more of those in the legislature right now so we can kind of bring a little sanity back to Olympia.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Chad, if people want to volunteer, donate, or find out more about you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Well, my website is easiest. It's just voteforchad.com, either number 4 or FOR, either of them work. And I really would appreciate some support because we've actually got 5 videos out there, and we're trying to buy airtime for those. They're great videos. We just need to get seen. And fortunately, there's not a lot of competition for that airtime right now, so we can get some pretty good deals if you're willing to support the campaign.
Chad Magendoz, who's running for state senate in the 5th Legislative District. You should vote for him. You should support him. You should doorbell for him. That's how we change things in Olympia. Chad, thank you so much for joining us today. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Ari.
Always a pleasure. We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, the ICE Antifa encampment, which has been set up across from the facility for almost 4 months now, is finally removed. We'll tell you why. But before we get to any of that, President Trump is on his way home after yet another successful foreign policy swing, this time through Asia. First, he makes some deals with Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand. Then he's got some deals that he's making with Japan today. A lot of this involves steel. A lot of this involves precious metals and minerals, which we need very, very badly in order to make things like cell phones. This is another huge win. In fact, the Japanese Prime Minister was addressing the service members on board the USS George Washington today. I don't remember the last time we had a member of the Japanese government on board a U.S. Navy ship. Oh, wait, maybe I do. No, this time we're friends. We're friends. It's all good. It's all good. But now you've got more trade deals with Malaysia, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, Japan. This is huge. Patty Murray. Patty Murray. Talk about bad timing. Patty Murray today put up some post talking about how Trump's tariffs were a tax on all Americans, especially Washingtonians, and they're the biggest tax of her lifetime. Lady, how about you try talking to Bob Ferguson about that, who signed the largest tax increase in Washington state history? How about you talk to Joe Biden? How about you talk to yourself about that? You approved the Inflation Reduction Act, which was out of control spending, which actually jacked up inflation, which is an actual tax on all Americans. But this is the nonsense they're spewing. Bob Ferguson, he's going all bonkers crazy on social media about how much this is costing the average Washingtonian. Dude, you signed the largest tax increase in Washington state history, and you're going to jack the taxes again. They can't deal with the winning. Can't deal with it at all. Here's President Trump addressing the sailors aboard the USS George Washington today.
American strength is roaring back like never before, and with your help, America is respected once more, and it is respected at levels that we haven't seen before.
Exactly. You start blowing up a few drug dealer submarines, and then you're going to get the respect of the narco-terrorists who may not mess with you anymore. Oh, yeah. That's another thing we missed before when we were having our water skiing legislation, how these guys aren't just fishermen who are out there. How many people you know own a submarine? Do you know anybody who owns a submarine? I don't know anybody who owns a submarine, especially not as like, well, in the marina, there's the guy with the Mastercraft, and there's the guy with the big yacht, and there's the guy with the fishing boat, and there's the dude with the submarine. Yeah, right next to that pontoon boat and the jet skis. Yeah, he takes a submarine out. I mean, you only see it for a few minutes or two until he dives in Lake Washington. Give me a break. President Trump addressed this directly today.
For many years, the drug cartels have waged war in America, and at long last, we're finally waging war on the cartels. We're waging war like they've never seen before. And we're going to win that battle. We're winning it already.
Exactly. If you're going to have a war on drugs, then let's fight to win. See, the misconception about the war on drugs is that it was a war on drug users, and there's some truth to that. We jailed drug users rather than get them treatment, and they only got into more drugs. Now, mind you, a lot of parents I talk to who have unfortunately had problems with their kids being drug addicts have told me that jail is when their kids were forced to dry out because they realized they hit rock bottom and begged for people to arrest their kids, and said one of the biggest mistakes the government ever did was going soft on the drug users because it never forced them to get clean. Now we went the other direction, where you literally have your taxpayer dollars funding drug paraphernalia kits that are being given out to these guys. When I went up to the safe injection sites, the heroin injection sites up in Vancouver, they had a safe. And the safe is where they kept actual drugs, even though they said, oh, we don't give out drugs. Yeah, they kept a clean stash of drugs up there. You know, you have vending machines now you can get fentanyl out of up in Canada. How soon until that comes here? I'll just wait till Mayor Katie Wilson imposes something like that. Just watch. But if you're going to have a war on drugs, then have a war on drug dealers. Instead, around here, if right now Bob Ferguson says you want to be an illegal in this state, come on in. Human trafficking, drug trafficking, whatever you want. No problem whatsoever. Well, at least President Trump is looking out for America and saying we're not putting up with this stuff anymore.
We stopped a lot of those wars based on trade and tariffs and penalties, and they're getting all ready to fight, and then we tell them no more trading with the United States. We're putting tariffs on your nation, et cetera, et cetera. It's called national security for us, but it's really national security for the whole world. And everywhere we go, America is actually making peace, and it's peace through strength. When they look at this, when they look at you people, they say, we're not going to mess around with them. So it's very important.
Yeah, exactly. But what do you do when a country doesn't have trade? So let's look at Gaza for a minute. So there's all these videos coming out of Gaza right now where the Palestinians are in restaurants and their influencers are talking about how great it is and how great it is that they're not under the occupation, whatever that means. Wow, you guys got over that genocide real quickly. I didn't see people after the Holocaust looking that good or in restaurants and such, which shows you the whole thing was a scam the whole time. And Hamas continues to scam everybody. So last night was the ultimate insanity. Last night there was supposed to be a hostage body returned to Israel. And then drone footage comes out because the IDF is monitoring all of Hamas's activity right now. Drone footage comes out where you see Hamas terrorists taking a body bag out of a nearby building, using an excavator. Wait, I thought they didn't have construction equipment. They sure had it on October 7th. Using an excavator to dig a massive hole in the ground, throw in the remains, or the body bag, and then cover it with soil. Then they bring over the Red Cross to say, hey, we found a body, dig it up. And the Red Cross participates in this charade. So they bring back the body. The body wasn't a body. It was other remains of one of the hostages that was already given back. I don't know if their family knew that they didn't get all of their loved one back when they buried him. This is the game Hamas is playing. Oh, we can't find them. They have them stashed. They know exactly where they are. You're telling me you don't know where your most valuable bargaining chip is? And in the meantime, Hamas continues to violate the ceasefire. So once again, Israel is retaliating. Now, J.D. Vance was asked about this earlier today, and he had a perfect response. He says, look, there's a peace in place, but it doesn't mean there's not going to be violations in the meantime. We just don't want them going to full-blown war again. If Hamas continues to do what they do and not disarm, you're going to have a problem. Right now, Hamas hasn't been able to keep the first phase of this deal, which was a return of all the living and dead hostages. Hasn't happened yet. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, was asked about the ongoing issues with Hamas not abiding by the ceasefire.
You're talking about the strike against the Palestinian Jihad individuals? Yes. Yeah, look, Israel didn't surrender its right to self-defense. Obviously, the ceasefire is based on obligations on both sides. By the way, we'd also like to see Hamas speed up the return of hostage bodies. We still have 13 hostages, 2 Americans included. But we don't view that as a violation of the ceasefire. They have a right. There's an imminent threat to Israel, and all the mediators agree with that.
Exactly. All the mediators, all the involved countries agree with that. If you attack Israel, you mess with the bull, you get the horns. That's what's going to happen. But the left and the right are using Israel as a wedge issue to gain power, gain control over their side, or just drive their parties apart. We were talking about earlier in the show, Zoran Mamdani. Zoran Mamdani met and praised Imam Siraj Wahaj, who's an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing.
He is an imam who supported and praised an infamous radical Islamic terrorist leader. But New York City mayoral frontrunner Zoran Mamdani not only met with him, but is not renouncing him. Mamdani posted this photograph of him smiling in meeting with Imam Siraj Wahaj during a campaign visit last week. But it turns out Wahaj has in the past praised radical Islamic terrorists who were later convicted of attacking New York City. He testified as a defense witness in the 1995 trial of the blind sheikh, Abdel Rahman, and his terrorist cell. They were found guilty of the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center that killed 6 people and injured more than 1,000, and another plot to blow up New York City buildings and tunnels. Wahaj testified at the trial, quote, "We have met. I respect him. He is a well-known scholar. That is why I respect him. And he is bold as a strong preacher of Islam."
So Zoran Mamdani respects the bold teacher unindicted terrorist who was a conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Funny, he's also endorsed by CARE, the unindicted co-conspirators in the Holy Land Foundation trial, which was the largest terror financing trial in U.S. history. Remember when Zoran Mamdani rapped about how he's in love with the Holy Land Five? You mean the 5 people in federal prison right now who are funneling money to Hamas? But it's not just a problem on the left. Zoran Mamdani, what he's doing is he's trying to make the entire left the far left. What he's trying to do is destroy the Democrat Party and replace them with the Democrat Socialists of America Party, which is even more radical than the Democrats. Democrats like Kathy Hochul and Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are holding on by their fingertips because they're not left enough for the far left. And people like AOC, Bernie Sanders, and Zoran Mamdani want to make sure these guys are primaried. Soon, we're not going to have a Democrat Party. I've been talking about this all the time. What you're going to have instead is this far-left extremist party. And it doesn't stop there. They're going to keep getting more and more and more and more extreme. It's absolutely crazy. How much crazier can this get? Now, you remember Zoran Mamdani, the guy who hugged the 1993 unindicted co-conspirator in the World Trade Center bombing, calling him a bold thinker and had respect for him? So you remember Zoran Mamdani yesterday, we were making fun of him a lot because he was crying these crocodile tears, talking about his aunt who didn't want to ride the subways anymore in New York City after 9/11 because she wore a hijab and she was facing Islamophobia. You remember this nonsense?
I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of New York City.
Oh, so sad. So sad.
I want to speak to the memory of my aunt.
Oh, no. Oh,
who
no.
stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
Oh, give me a break. Okay. Everybody found out this isn't true. Everybody found out the aunt lives in Tunisia and doesn't wear a hijab, and for all we know has never even been to New York. So Zoran Mamdani gets called out on this at a presser yesterday.
How will you respond to President Trump?
Recently, in a recent address about Islamophobia, you referenced your aunt and some of the harassment she was facing post 9/11. Is that a blood relative?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was speaking about my aunt. I was speaking about Zehra Fouy, my father's cousin, who sadly passed away a few years ago.
Wait a second. I thought it was your aunt. Now it's your father's cousin? I'm really, really confused.
I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate.
What's that make us?
Absolutely nothing, which is what you are about to become.
Yeah, my wife Morgan Fairchild, yeah. What kind of nonsense is this? This guy lies. That is what he does, and people fall for it. So he's got a nice smile, and he talks nicely, and people buy his line of BS. And they don't realize, they're like the frog on the hot plate on the Democrat side of the aisle. They're like, how'd my party get so radical? Well, you're supporting guys like Zoran Mamdani, who's hugging terrorists, who's calling terrorists bold thinkers. Jon Stewart did this last night, compared jihadi-loving communist Zoran Mamdani to Jackie Robinson.
I wish you all the best. Honestly, I think any New Yorker who looks at someone getting an opportunity, who's representing communities that have not been as represented, a Muslim, a young person, a progressive, a democratic socialist, there are so many different communities that are looking to you, and this, I hate to put it on you, as a bit of a Jackie Robinson moment. And I know that probably wields some weight, but man, oh man, what an exciting opportunity.
Do you remember Jackie Robinson consorting with terrorists? The guy who's famous for America's pastime did not want to destroy America the way that Zoran Mamdani wants to do. And they have made no secret about this at all, about how radical they actually are. Not at all. This is nothing new. Nothing new at all. But on the right, we're seeing a resurgence of this insanity too. Last night, Tucker Carlson had on Nick Fuentes, the actual white supremacist, the modern-day neo-Nazi crazy guy, the one who was banned from Turning Point USA by Charlie Kirk, said he couldn't come in. Yeah, Tucker Carlson, who fancies himself a spokesperson for Turning Point USA, had this guy on the show. And while they're having the discussion, Tucker Carlson says the people he hates most in the world are not Antifa and not the Democrats and not terrorists or not anything else. No. The people Tucker Carlson hates the most are Christians. Give a listen.
How do you explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that, John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all, George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that? Right. And I can just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody, because like, what? Because it's Christian heresy, and I'm offended by that as a Christian.
Whoa. Okay. I don't know that much about Christianity, but I think this guy needs a review of the good book and not understanding where any of this comes from. But he's literally saying he hates Christian Zionists more than anybody else because they support Israel, and he's saying that to a literal white supremacist. This is the guy he's saying it to.
Hitler was a pedophile and kind of a pagan. It's like, well, he was also really cool. So, time to grow up. We're not children anymore.
Yeah. Really, really cool. Really cool. He loves Hitler. In fact, he doesn't just love Hitler, he loves another guy too.
Late December. It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was an admirer. But we don't need to go into that. I guess.
Well, that's okay. Let's get back. We'll circle back to that.
It was weird because the reason I mentioned that, it was almost like because I woke up that day and I was like, oh, it's December 18th. And I was just like very acutely aware of like today's like a strange day. This is the day that the attempt happened.
Okay. Hang on. So when you have a guest on a show, and trust me, I have some experience with this, if you disagree with them, you bring them on to push back on them. Tucker Carlson says he's going to circle back after the guy says he loves Stalin, celebrates his birthday, but never pushes back on him. This is not the first time Tucker Carlson platformed a crazy person. Let's not forget Tucker Carlson goes to Russia to talk about how amazing it is rather than the United States of America. Don't give me your America first. You're not. You're Russia first. You're Qatar first. You're whatever it is. Tucker Carlson is trying to divide the right by bringing on these lunatics. I don't know if he's mad at Fox News. I don't know who he's mad at. But Tucker Carlson is trying to drag the right further and further and further to the right, demonizing Christians. Are you kidding me with this nonsense? What's the difference between him and Mamdani? They both have their own goals in mind. They're both trying to be the kings of their castle. They're both trying to be the ones in charge who everybody listens to. It's absolutely crazy. The good news is it doesn't seem like Americans are falling for this nonsense. It seems like when you see these college campus videos like with Glenn Beck and such, Glenn Beck is talking to these college kids, and I saw one the other day who started quoting this nonsense, this Groyper nonsense, and Glenn Beck shut him down and everybody cheered. I think the right can save itself by calling out the radicals in their party because the left let themselves get dragged more to the left by not calling out the radicals in their party. I think it's our responsibility to call out the radicals and say, nope, that guy does not speak for us. From the other Mike and Everett, Ari, in regard to the whole thing of Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Marjorie Taylor Greene, potentially splitting the right. Yeah, it could be an issue, but at the same time, as someone who used to listen to Candace and Tucker before they went off the rails into what they are now, once they went off the rails and showed themselves for what they truly are, I stopped listening to them, and I think the vast majority of the right have also stopped listening to them. So if they were to split off people from the right, it'll probably be the people that don't want in our party anyway, a.k.a. the fringe right extremists. I know I can't speak for everyone, but I think the majority of people on the right have common sense and realize that Candace and Tucker are too far right. That's from the other Mike. Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening. Except there are people who are influenced by this. They literally just arrested a guy in Florida. They arrested a guy in Texas who's wanted in Florida for death threats against Seth Dillon. Seth Dillon, you know who he is? He is the guy who's the editor of the Babylon Bee, the parody site. And the guy who wanted to kill him believed Candace Owens' nonsense. He was radicalized by Candace Owens. It's absolutely crazy. We need to call out this insanity on the right like the left never did. You never hear Pocahontas calling out the squad. You never hear anybody on that side calling out the squad. Never, ever, ever. They're afraid of them. We need to call out the Candace Owens. We need to call out the Tucker Carlsons. We need to call out the Nick Fuenteses. We need to call out all these guys who are spewing this nonsense, because you know what's going to happen? People are going to say, oh my God, they are a bunch of hard right-wingers. You're going to make everybody in the media accurate. Let me know what you think. Give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, the Antifa encampment in Portland is finally cleared. But is it back already, and what triggered the clearing? We'll discuss that, plus so much more. But first, Todd Herman's Daily Thoughtcast, right now on the Ari Hoffman Show. We will get to your calls and your texts, but I promised you this story, and I want to make sure I give it to you because some people were asking me about it. What's going on down in Portland with the Antifa encampment? So across the street from the ICE facility, Antifa have been staging their supplies, and yet Portland police refuse to get rid of this entire thing. They just leave it there. They let it fester. And you know what happens when you let an open wound fester? Things get worse and worse and worse. And it is an Antifa one. They literally have Antifa flags. This has been documented by all the streamers that are down there. Well, now, according to the Post-Millennial, Portland police have cleared an Antifa encampment near the city's Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility following viral footage showing militants blocking roads and directing traffic. Independent journalist Nick Shirley posted a video on X showing the aftermath of the sweep, with streets left empty, numerous supplies abandoned, items seen in the footage, including medical equipment, food, boxes of masks, water bottles, and other materials used by the group. So this encampment, they also assaulted Brandy Cruz when she was going through it. Jonathan Cho's had his run-in with these guys before. And I wonder if the real reason they actually took this thing down is not because all this violence was happening, but because they covered a fire hydrant. I really wonder if that's what it was, because you see it in the videos. It's insane to me that you could have propane tanks set up in this massive encampment, which spontaneously combust in these encampments, and they weren't doing anything about it for over 140 days. By the way, we've already beaten the record for 2020, which was 120 days of rioting at the federal courthouse there in Oregon. This insanity goes on, as our guest yesterday mentioned. It's now kind of turned into the streamers' capital, where now it's not so much the police against Antifa. It's now like the streamer brigade against Antifa down there. It's crazy. Look, you should be able to go anywhere you want, video anything you want in an American city. But it's crazy to me that Portland police have abdicated responsibility, that now we think it's a big deal when they finally clear an Antifa encampment. That's right. A domestic terrorist group has an encampment across from a federal property, and the Portland police refuse to do anything about it for 140 days? Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. I don't know if Portland can be saved. Do you think Portland can be saved? Give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line. Take a call from Ben in SeaTac. Ben, what's going on, man?
Hey, Ari. Hey, I think you're a little bit too much worried about this Fuentes dude and all that stuff, what you were saying. I'm far right. No one gets more right-wing than me. Okay?
All right.
And Hitler is on the left. He's a socialist Marxist. Marxists hate the Jews. You know why they hate the Jews? You know why they hate Israel? Because they hate the Bible, and if Israel gets destroyed, the Bible is false. That's why they hate Israel so much. That's one of the reasons, but that's a big reason. But this guy's a zero. I've never even heard of this guy until a few months ago, and the left will probably try to do that David Duke nonsense. Oh, will you refute David Duke? Will you refute David Duke? This guy is a zero. There's no splitting to the right. The Republican Party is mega. This guy... If this guy says Hitler is cool, then you must think he's probably like the American Nazi Party. If you read that, you're reading the Democrat Party platform. They believe in all that environmental extremism. They believe in all that big government stuff. Yeah, that's why when I hear people say the far right circles around and hits the far left, which I actually heard you say, and you're wrong about this, it's nothing to do with that, because Hitler was not right-wing at all. He was a hardcore socialist. I'm sure you're aware of that. I mean, you should read Mein Kampf. If you haven't, you'll just read a bunch of Democrat Party propaganda.
So I'll tell you what, Ben, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're coming from. Not the part about reading Mein Kampf. I can do without, okay? But I'll tell you this, I'll tell you this for a second. Yes, I know it was the Socialist Party, the Nazi Socialist Party. I know all that. Studied history. I hear what you're saying. But here's what I'm concerned about. How old are you, Ben, if you don't mind my asking?
60.
Okay, 50 or 60? What'd you say there?
60.
60. Okay, you're 60 years old. So you probably don't spend as much time on the internet as the younger people do. The younger people don't actually take a look at things. They don't take the time to read first source material. They don't do that. They just read headlines and posts on the interwebs. And when they do that, they believe a lot of this nonsense. I'm not worried about you, Ben. I'm not worried about anybody in your demographic. I'm not even that worried about people in my demographic. What I'm worried about is a guy like this has millions of followers on social media, and they believe his nonsense. And if you look at the polling regarding the youth, they're buying into his stuff on the left. They're buying into his stuff on the right. People are buying into this. That's what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is the generation that comes after us. And if you're looking at all the polling regarding those younger generations, it's not going in a favorable direction. And what I'm worried about also is that exactly what you said. The left is going to take a guy like this and paint everybody on the right like this guy. That's what I'm concerned about happening. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Eben and Bonnie Lake says, Ari, yes, absolutely call out the far right and try to talk some sense into them before they can drag more people to the far right and further divide us all. Ted says, yeah, Candace Owens, what happened to her? Supporting Hamas, and what's up with her insisting that Macron's wife is a dude? Who cares, right? It's a little weird that they do that, by the way. This one here, they're questioning my thing from before. The other Mike at Everett says, are there seriously vending machines for drugs up in Canada? Yes, there are. We covered it at the time, and we're concerned they're going to come down here. This one from Ted. I haven't listened to Tucker for several years. I could tell he was drifting off into the proverbial swamp, and I don't know anybody following him anymore. Is that true? Is that the case? I mean, apparently a lot of people watch the show. I don't think they're all bots. This one here from Rob in Lakewood. He says, young people get their news from TikTok. That's the problem. That's the issue. A 10-second video. You know what's crazy? I finally mastered the art of the 1-minute video, Mike. And now they tell me 30 seconds and under. How do you talk about anything in 20 seconds, 10 seconds? It's crazy. You can't do that. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. Big lawsuit to protect parents' rights here in Washington. Lawyers, legal team are going to be joining us. Tell us how they're looking out for you. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. My friends, we know that the Washington State Legislature decided they know better how to parent your kids than you do. And even though a whole bunch of you worked your tails off to get a bunch of initiatives before the legislature last year, we know that they passed the one on parental rights, guaranteeing that you knew what was going on with your kids in school. And then the next session, what they do? Gut the thing. Because they didn't want you to actually see what was going on. They knew if they passed it, they would get through an election and they would know they could change it later. Now, a group of Washington parents and school board members and educators have filed a lawsuit alleging that House Bill 1296 is unconstitutional and unlawfully strips parents of their rights to know and make decisions about their children's education and welfare. Joining us now to discuss on the Warrior Injury Law studio line is Paige McElrath, who's the Director of Communications and Operations for the Citizen Action Defense Fund. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Ari. Appreciate it.
No problem. Now, I have to ask the cynical question first, and it's not because I don't support what you're doing, but there's another initiative going on right now by our friends over at Let's Go Washington that seeks to undo what the Democrats did with 1296. Is this just a backup plan? Are they on parallel tracks? How do we approach this?
So that is completely separate from what we're doing here at the Citizen Action Defense Fund. While the goals certainly overarching goals seem to be in line in that this initiative, as well as our lawsuit, seeks to restore parental protections for parents across Washington state, we are not working collaboratively with them on that. That's sort of a separate issue. Although I will say that however we can get this resolved, however we can manage to restore parental protections, we're happy. So whatever that looks like, we're thrilled.
Gotcha. Now, what are the terms, or terms is not really the right word, that's more for deal, but what are the items on here that you guys are suing under to say, hey, this thing it should be revoked immediately?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's supporters of HB 1296 have attempted to say that there's, very little that was overturned with relation to I-2081. And that's just not true, because if there was no actual change, then they wouldn't have bothered to pass a new law in the first place, right? So sort of the core issues here are that it undermines parents' constitutional right to direct the upbringing and care of their children, which are rights long recognized by the courts. It gives government agencies the power to withhold information from parents about their own kids. And that's not only a violation of parental rights, it's a violation of due process. So the case isn't about denying support to students, it's just ensuring transparency and trust, given that parents are the primary stakeholders in the outcome of their children.
Now, do you think this is something that could find itself, and I know it's easy to predict or easily for me to say, oh, sure, is it going to the Supreme Court? But we know what courts typically do with these things here in Washington. How high can this one go?
It can go up to the state Supreme Court. It's too early to say right now what that will look like, though, so I don't necessarily want to speculate.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense, because we know what the courts around here do. We know they heavily favor Democrats. So I'm concerned about this because I think you have legitimate grounds here in your lawsuit. I mean, you're talking about not just a violation of parents' fundamental rights, violation of religious freedom and free exercise rights, but also my favorite one, a violation of the single subject rule. Isn't that what they use to strike down Republican initiatives all the time?
It is. You are not incorrect. That's for sure.
Gotcha.
It's obviously a concern of ours. As you said, the courts don't always issue rulings that are in favor of, what we view as constitutional and legal, which is unfortunate. That said, our legal arguments are sound. So assuming that we have a judge that's receptive to a straightforward legal and constitutional argument, we do see an opportunity to prevail here, and we're hopeful that the judge will issue a ruling based on that.
Gotcha. So what are you asking them to do? Declare it unconstitutional?
Yes. It violates the state and the federal constitution. So there's sort of two parts here. And our lead plaintiff, for example, he's a parent as well as a school board director. And there's sort of two primary issues here. As a school board director, he is being told that he has to withhold information from parents, which, as a parent is obviously problematic to him. But as a school board director, he's effectively being told, along with all other school board directors, that they have to violate federal law in order to follow this new state law. So there's a lot of ambiguity here that makes it really difficult for teachers, for school board members to make sure that they're operating in a legal way. So we are asking the court to strike this down as unconstitutional. And, if the state would like to, they're making this about protecting trans kids, protecting kids who aren't necessarily supported by their families. And if the state wants to do that, they are welcome to do that, but they need to do it in a way that's constitutional. You can't pass a law that subsequently violates the law, right? So that's all we're asking the court to do here.
Right, which is an unreasonable request, especially as somebody who's got 3 kids, and I already know the stuff the state tries to hide from me and the stuff I have to get permission from my kids when they go to a doctor's office or anything else. It's absolutely insane. So in the last few minutes, we have with Paige McElrath, who's the Director of Communications and Operations for the Citizen Action Defense Fund. You filed the lawsuit. Has there been any response from the state yet?
Not yet, no. They claim that I've seen, the statements that they've made that they are reviewing the lawsuit, but there has been no formal response, and they certainly haven't filed one yet.
Gotcha. Okay, well, please keep us in touch, because this is something that affects every single parent in Washington state, and it's something that could actually play very, very heavily in upcoming elections. So we really appreciate you guys taking on this case and bringing it to the spotlight, or putting a spotlight on it, rather, so that way we can all know what's going on.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me on to talk about it. I know it's an important issue, so it's good for listeners to sort of be up to date on what's going on with it.
Always a pleasure. Paige McElrath, Director of Communications and Operations for the Citizen Action Defense Fund, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ari.
Always a pleasure. We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues, including our good news segment. Put a smile on your face heading into the evening commute. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Only good news to wrap up another episode of the Ari Hoffman Show right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. And our first story comes to us from San Francisco Gate, which I always laugh at the name of that because Gate has become synonymous with Watergate or something. So SF Gate. Yes, is San Francisco a scandal? I think so. Anyway, the century-old Sequoia Park Zoo in Eureka said that a wild young American black bear broke into the facility and paid a visit to 3 captive bears of the same species. An employee happened upon the surprise visitor during a daily inspection on Friday morning. Before the zoo opened, the wild bear explored some toys and interacted with the zoo's bears through their habitat fencing and appeared friendly. Quote, he was really, really interested in our 3 bears. Was one bed too small? Was one bed too big and one just right? And he introduced himself to all of them through the fence. This sounds like something out of Madagascar. This is Jim Campbell Spickler, who's the zoo's director. The interaction between them was really sweet, calm, and curious. We think he was just looking for a friend, though maybe that's anthropomorphizing, of course. The zoo's 3 resident bears are named Tuli, Ishung, and I'm not going to pronounce that last name, that's for sure. After the bear break-in, officers from the Eureka Police Department and a warden from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife reported to the zoo to assist the staff. They opened the perimeter gate, and after about 20 minutes with some encouragement, the wild bear, who might only be a year and a half old and has an unknown gender, I'm sorry, what? Exited. Why are you looking? Why are you trying to figure that out? Just say the bear. That's a San Francisco newspaper. Exited the zoo into the adjacent 67-acre Sequoia Park. Overall, he was a very polite visitor, said Christine Noel, the zoo's education curator, who saw the bear first. It was a good outcome for everyone involved, especially the bear, said Peter Tiras, spokesperson for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. How exactly the bear entered the zoo remains a mystery, though it seems clear that it came from Sequoia Park. Bears and other wild creatures like deer and otters are known to frequent that park, while the zoo has plenty of other non-human visitors, including skunks, raccoons, and foxes. This is the first time a bear has appeared. Campbell Spickler said, we do not know how the bear got in. The main perimeter fence was not breached in any way. Likely he was very intent on coming in and visiting our bears, so he could have climbed up into a tree and come on over. Wait a second. That thing from Cocaine Bear is actually real, where the bear could just go right up the tree just like that, even when he's not on cocaine? That's horrifying, by the way. Truly horrifying. That movie still is awesome. The staff for the zoo, home to over 150 animals, said they were surprised at the widespread public interest in the bear encounter. Why do you think they're curious? Because you claim you have this fortified zoo with a fence and somehow a giant bear got into it, and you're lucky it didn't happen during zoo hours. I have questions, as we might say, about the bear getting into the zoo. This is rather concerning, by the way. Meanwhile, speaking of animals, there's a Washington Airbnb that's been profiled by Seattle Refined, where you sleep in a school bus and befriend mini Highland cows. Okay, hang on. This is how we solve the homeless situation, okay? This is how we do it. We just get some abandoned school buses and park them out in the corn somewhere, back in the eastern... No, don't send them to eastern Washington. That's not nice to the people in eastern Washington. Just put them in a field with some cows somewhere. According to Seattle Refined, okay, we'll admit it, this Airbnb is slightly outside our usual boutique hotel with Skyline View Lane, but a converted school bus in Rainier, Washington, with a queen bed, private hot tub, fire pit, and pasture full of emus and miniature Highland cows right outside. We couldn't not feature it. The Bee Haven bus at RMR Farmstead has racked up a near perfect 4.92 star rating on Airbnb, and over 100 rave reviews from guests who swear it's cozy, peaceful, and surprisingly well-equipped. Yes, there's Wi-Fi, a kitchenette, and even a rustic tub with hot water. You'll sleep inside the school bus, wake to farm animal sounds, and maybe even meet the mini Highland cows who live on the site. Honestly, come for the novelty, stay for the vibes. We'll just be here reconsidering our entire aesthetic. It starts at $165 a night. I'm looking at this thing, and I'm skeptical. I'm very, very skeptical. But at the same time, I've stayed in some weird places with an Airbnb. Never a school bus or anything like that. I do like the hot tub on the roof, though. That's very cool. And it is right next to this petting zoo. Looks legit on the inside. It's the outside that gives me the creeps, though.
Is it an evil petting zoo?
Well, of course it is. Of course it's an evil petting zoo. Yeah, I think that's really... I like the one that's in the airplane. The airplane Airbnb that we talked about a while ago. That one was on Seattle Refined, too. That one looked kind of cool. In fact, I like the TWA hotel, which I spoke about, which I stayed at JFK. That was awesome, where there's a cocktail lounge in the old Constellation airplane. That was awesome. In fact, I drove past it during my travels in New York. We drove past the TWA hotel trying to get back to the airport. My daughter says, I want to go check that out. My wife says she wants to go check that out. Like that kind of stuff. Remember, even when we're not on air, you can follow us on social media, Ari Hoffman Official on Facebook and Instagram, The Hofffather over on Twitter. You can follow it all over there. Also, I've got some new articles that we're going to be putting up at kvi.com. So make sure you check those out, including our interview with Representative Dan Newhouse on the shutdown, which we had yesterday. So if you missed that, make sure you check it out, kvi.com, because we also discussed this whole hullabaloo over people losing their minds, claiming we're going to have an energy shortage, but the people claiming it are the same ones who want to tear down the Snake River dams. Yes, who's causing an energy shortage if there actually is one? That's going to do it for us today, my friends, but fear not, we will be back tomorrow with more insane stories and more exciting guests. You've been listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.